Okay, so how do you be more assertive? A lot of us are not assertive these days. We're either passive aggressive, or aggressive. And being assertive is the most effective way to communicate your needs, establish boundaries, and overall it will boost your self esteem. One is using I statements. When you don't use I statements, it can often come off as blaming or being overly aggressive. This can potentially damage your relationship where using I statements kind of pulls the blame off of the person. Instead, you're just kind of communicating your feelings and what you need out of the relationship. So it could be like, I feel blank when blank happens. And I know a lot of people don't like talking like that because it puts them in a vulnerable position, but being vulnerable doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you're being open. And this honesty can be really good for a relationship. I statements are also a great way to kind of open up the door so you can start setting some boundaries if you need to. Instead of telling someone, oh, you should know what I want, you can say, I just need some quiet time after work. Also, practicing saying no. A lot of people are scared to say no, and then there's also a lot of people who aren't afraid to say no. They say people who take don't have limits, and that is so true. Besides, people won't know kind of where you're at if you're not willing to say no. They'll just keep taking what they can. So that's why it's important as part of being assertive is saying no as much as you need to. And you don't need to explain why necessarily. If you want to give them a brief reason, that's fine. Just keep in mind that you don't need to convince them of you saying no. You just say no and then maybe why, or you can leave that part out. You can just say no. If you are using this as an opportunity to set some boundaries, keep in mind that your boundaries need to be reasonable, firm, and fair. They also need to be consistent. Because if you're not consistent and you're like flip-floppy all over the place, you sometimes enforce them and you sometimes don't, this will create a situation where people either feel like they're walking on eggshells, or they just won't take your boundaries seriously and they'll trample all over them because they know at the end of the day you're probably not going to enforce them. And of course, make sure you're respecting other people's boundaries because you cannot ask that of them and then not do it yourself, right? And when all these conversations are happening, do your absolute best to stay calm. I know this is much easier said than done. If you need to take breaks or even practice the conversation before you go into it, that can be a helpful way of, your voice not breaking or you getting overly emotional, whether you're angry or upset. Staying calm will really help the situation and help people take you more seriously.